Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about some basic stuff that people need to understand about nutrition and calories and what both people who follow ketogenic diets and people who follow really low-fat diets get completely wrong. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. And I've done videos in the past about explaining why you can't really get around calories in versus calories out, and how this stuff works, because you have some major misconceptions. And I had actually mentioned in a video the other day that humans don't actually really, under normal circumstances, store carbohydrates as fat. The sugar that you're eating doesn't actually, and that's a different form of carb. There's a lot of fructose in that. That's a different animal. But even then, even though fructose can be stored as fat easier than glucose, it's not something we really do under normal circumstances. The fat that you have on your body is basically coming from the fat that you eat. Now, when you make a statement like that, you then have people who, I had a guy come in and say, so you're saying if I eat really lean steak and beer and that's all I consumed, I could eat unlimited amounts of it and I'd lose all my body fat? No, I didn't say that. I just said that the carbs in that beer is not going to get stored as fat. There's fat in your steak. And I didn't say anything about losing fat. All right, all we're talking about is, can we slow down how much fat we gain, right? That's all that's about. So what people need to understand on the other end of it, because we'll talk about the keto guys in a minute, the really low fat people get a misconception when you say that, which is it's a completely scientifically valid statement with enormous amounts of human data to support it. All right, it's really easy for you guys to go dig up data. You could find enough data confirming it that you could spend the next 3 days straight without sleeping if you can get enough caffeine in reading it all. There's that much of it out there showing what I'm talking about. So I don't need to link anything. You guys could find it very easily, so much of it that you would be busy for days reading through the data. Humans don't really store carbs as fat. Those are rodent studies that idea came from, and bovine studies, not humans. But they also stop you from burning fat. That's the problem you have. That's the problem we run into, is that if you go on ultra high carbohydrate diet, guess what? Your body burns nothing but carbs. You burn almost no fat for fuel. Now, that's not a bad thing. We run really well on carbs. That is not a bad thing. And you're not going to gain as much fat. But here's what you have to remember. A calorie surplus is going to make you gain a little bit of body fat most of the time, unless it's pure muscle you're gaining somehow. And here's what I would say. I mean, what's a really low-fat diet? You know, if you're eating 3,000 calories a day and you eat 50 grams of fat, that's a little over 300 calories of fat. That's up to what, about 350 calories of fat? That's 10 to 11%, maybe about 11% of your calories coming from fat. That's a low-fat diet. That's a low-fat diet. If you're eating in a surplus, you still have over 300 calories of fat available. Now, if you start dropping under that, guess what? You can develop some dietary deficiencies. You can develop dietary deficiencies if your fat goes too low. That can harm your health. It'll harm your performance. It'll harm your muscle gains. So that's not really a free lunch. Not a free lunch. I mean, but really low-fat bulking has benefits. It has benefits for people who have the appetite to pull it off. But you're still going to gain some body fat because you're burning pretty much exclusively carbohydrates for fuel. You're not tapping into your body fat stores because there's no deficit. And you're still eating a little bit of fat. Now, you're not even going to store all of that fat because, again, you're going to burn a little bit of it for fuel no matter what, small amount of it. So, you say you eat a 500 calorie deficit doing that, you're still probably going to store up to 200 calories of that fat. You know, just ballparking it, throwing those numbers out there. I don't have exact data. I'm just giving you guys just what could probably happen. Well, that still ends up being a pound of fat or two every month, doesn't it? Right? Yeah, of course it does. So you still gain fat. With a calorie surplus, you'll still gain a little fat, but it's going to be a lot less fat per calorie than if you ate a lot more fat, right? And that's a low-fat diet. I mean, so honestly, low-fat bulking, if you're going to exceed a calorie surplus that's higher than your fat intake, it works okay, right? That's a good way to lean bulk, to minimize body fat while bulking. but you are going to gain some fat. Now, if you are only eating a really small surplus, it doesn't matter. Like, let's say your maintenance calories are about 3,000 and you eat 32 or 3,300 calories, you're not going to get any benefit from that, right? It's not going to matter because your calorie surplus is as small as the amount of fat you would even be eating on a low-fat diet that's a non-deficient diet. It's not going to matter. In that case, you wouldn't get an advantage. The only people who are getting an advantage from it are people who want to bulk hard and hit a pretty big, substantial calorie surplus and not gain as much body fat. But they're going to gain body fat. Okay, so we need perspective there. That's all I'm saying with that. The problem we have on the other end, ketogenic people say really, really stupid shit like, well, if you eat more fat, you burn more fat. Totally true statement. Do you know why you're burning more fat? Because you're eating more fat. The people who are burning more carbs is because they're eating more carbs. That doesn't help you lose body fat. You need to understand that. No, it doesn't make your body magically have more enzymes that give you a better ability to burn body fat or anything like that. It's not true. The research doesn't support it. Ketogenic people will say stuff like, well, insulin is what causes you to store body fat. No, it's not, actually not, but that's okay. Actually, insulin is more anabolic to muscle tissue than it is to fat tissue, particularly people who lift. It's not what your problem is. Insulin resistance is a totally different animal. And it seems like ketogenic people can't separate a potato from table sugar. They don't understand that they're different things. It's really weird. They don't have the ability to comprehend this. It's like completely outside of their ability to comprehend. The people who are big keto advocates, they can't understand it. Not all carbs are the same. In the way that they even have de novo lipogenesis, effects on insulin sensitivity. They're completely clueless, it seems like. They don't grasp that. They don't seem to understand that there are people who do 80% carb diets, so the right carbs, who have amazing insulin sensitivity. Better than someone who's been on a ketogenic diet by an enormous margin. Right? They can't comprehend it. It blows their mind. It's outside of their comprehension because all carbs bad, insulin bad, right? They don't get it. And they say things like there's a metabolic advantage to a ketogenic diet because your body pees out excess ketones and but then they want to get keto adapted, right? Well, what happens as soon as you're keto adapted? That stops happening at all. So maybe for a couple of weeks you might get that advantage, but here's what's happened. When we look at the lab studies, ketogenic diets are not superior for fat loss. For some people, they're superior for diet adherence, right? They're superior for diet adherence. And what the keto people need to understand, your body doesn't need insulin to store dietary fat. It doesn't need it. And if you eat a surplus of dietary fat, even if you're in ketosis, you will gain body fat. Now, the scale might go down. In other words, let's say your maintenance is 3,000 calories, right? And you eat 4,000 calories on a ketogenic diet coming up, right? You go into the ketogenic diet, you might actually lose weight on the scale and still gain body fat. And I know they'll be like, what? How's that possible? Because you've lost water weight. You've lost intramuscular glycogen. You've lost intramuscular water. You've lost water in your organs, subcutaneous water. You've lost water weight. And if you lose water weight, the scale can go down, but you could still have gained an entire pound of body fat. Because you can't get around calories in, calories out. And because dietary fat is what we store, you've got plenty of it available. So anytime you're in a surplus, you're going to be gaining it. Anytime you're in a deficit, you're going to be losing it. And that's how it will work even on a ketogenic diet. But if you go into a surplus on a ketogenic diet, a true ketogenic diet, you're in trouble. Your blood work goes to shit and you start gaining body fat. And that's not something I've made up. That's the reality of it. And there are plenty of fat people who live the ketogenic lifestyle. Go look at them. They're all over forums. People are like, oh, I do keto for life. They've been keto for 2 years, right? And you look at them and they're not lean. They don't look athletic. They're still pudgy. They're still carrying a fair amount of body fat. So perspective here, keto people. Perspective. No, you guys don't have a metabolic advantage. You have an appetite suppressing advantage in some cases. But it doesn't seem to work for everyone because if it did, we wouldn't have people, men who are 25% body fat and women who are 35% body fat who've been keto lifestyle for 2 years straight. Let that sink in. The diet's not magical. You're not bypassing calories in, calories out. What you are doing is consuming the macronutrient that your body stores as fat easily in large amounts. And so you are even more of a slave of specific calories in and out than the guy on the higher carb diet, because you don't get the thermic effects. You don't get the other stuff, the other things that you have available to maybe make you gain less body fat when you go into a surplus. You're going to gain 100% body fat for every calorie in your surplus. Right? Whereas in the guy on the really low fat diet might only gain half the fat that you gain on the calorie surplus. But I digress. People need to understand these things. They need to understand these things. And I'm not telling you that if you thrive and if you need to lose weight for a little while and you seem to be successful on a keto diet for a while, and that seems to be the only way you can adhere to your diet, I'm not telling you not to do it. What I'm telling you is you need to understand it is still within the calories in, calories out paradigm. You haven't escaped it in any way. All you've done is found a diet strategy that allows you personally to eat less. But that is the thing. That is the magic to fat loss. It really is. It's anything that properly controls your appetite is the magic secret. That is the magic secret. And it's not magic. It's just appetite control, diet adherence. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.